A lot of my kids, especially in technical theater, but a lot of the APA students, they kind of tease me about being old, calling me Methuselah and stuff like that. But, you know, one thing I get to say, I was young in the 60s, and I was at Woodstock.
The period between 1959 and 1963 was a major transformation for popular music in America. In the 1950s, you had the original rockers, which would be the first generation of teenage market. Those kids grew up, and they left high school, and they went into college. And once they were in college, they no longer wanted to have what they perceived as teeny bopper music. They looked for some more serious music. And folk music would be just the answer.
Things were changing. I remember there was a show on TV called Hootenanny, and it was just folk music. And there were concerts starting to happen at my school that were folk music concerts. We were loving it. It was really cool, but it was all banjos and guitars. There were no drums, keyboards, electronics.
The initial folk artists were Pete Seeger, Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, and there was this band called the Kingston Trio, and it was their song Tom Dooley that really set the tone for the college-age crowd, and they embraced folk music as the popular music.
Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down.
Folk musicians would perform in coffee houses throughout the country. The most famous coffee house scene was at Greenwich Village. Folk musicians would also play at outdoor festivals, and the most famous outdoor festival was the Newport Folk Festival in Rhode Island. And at these folk festivals, you would hear obscure folk artists. You would also hear from the classic blues guys that were rural, like Son House, Muddy Waters, people along those lines would play these festivals. And you'd also hear whatever was the contemporary folk artists. Bob Dylan would play Newport 65, and Dylan was getting really tired of the confines of an acoustic guitar and a harmonica. So Dylan invited the Paul Butterfield Band, along with session musician Al Cooper, who played on his hit Like a Rolling Stone, to be his backup band. And during this backup band, he rehearsed with Mike Bloomfield, who was the top blues guitarist of the country at the time. And they got on to do their show, and they started off with the song Maggie's Farm. And no sooner had the show started that Pete Seeger, who was the patriarch of folk music, was literally going crazy and yelling at the sound man, "I can't hear the vocals, it's all distorted, turn that music down." And there were also some boos that were starting to come from the audience. And Pete Seeger was so outraged that he told the sound man, "If I have an axe, I'm going to get an axe. If I have an axe, I would chop that microphone cable right now." He didn't chop the cables, but he was still outraged at the incident. Dylan was unnerved a bit by the boos, and later he would recollect that he tried something new, and he could definitely hear the booing, and it bothered him. But that was a landmark thing, because by him going electric, he would combine both the folk world and the rock world into a popular music style.
I remember being in the car with my parents, and Like a Rolling Stone came on the radio. And God, I love that song. And I'm going, "Mom, Dad, listen to this. Isn't this cool?" And they're going, "Are you kidding? This guy can't sing. He sounds terrible." And I was like, well, it didn't matter what the guy sounded like. It was what he was singing that was so great.